Reading The Boys for the first time is an experience you never quite recover from. And frankly, while part of you wants to gatekeep it, another, slightly more devilish part wants others to go through the exact same insane 72-issue roller coaster that you did. But here's the thing. The Boys isn't exactly the kind of comic you'd expect to see adapted for the screen. Let's be honest. Garth Ennis and Darick Robertson did far more than just twist the idea of superheroes. They put superpowered humans through the wringer and exposed just how ugly things can get behind the mask. And yet, here we are, in the golden age of streaming, where big money can make almost anything happen. So, Amazon Prime brought The Boys to the screen, and while the showrunners have stayed mostly faithful to the source material, there are definitely some changes they had to make. So, before you dive into the final season of The Boys, let's take a look at 10 major differences between the comic and the show.
Starlight, don't want to be late to your first official meeting.
Starlight's joining the Seven. Yep, we all know Starlight lost all those big dreams about saving the world pretty much the moment she walked into Vought Tower and ran into the Deep. Sure, the show played it pretty horrible with the Deep assaulting her, but the comics took it to a whole other level. In issue 3 of The Boys, things get nasty when, after a seemingly normal greeting, Homelander, A-Train, and Black Noir just stood there with their pants down. And yeah, Deep wasn't even a part of this in Ennis and Robertson's version. That's the moment when it hit Starlight what the actual price of joining the Seven was. Shaken, she asks them, "You're just going to force yourselves on me?" And Homelander, calm as ever, just tells her no. No one's forcing her, it's just a test of her dedication. And that's what made it worse, because what was she even supposed to do there? She was betrayed and completely alone. Starlight had no other option to either give up her dream or go through with it. Later, we see her in the bathroom, throwing up in disgust when she runs into Queen Maeve, and for a moment, her eyes shone and she started praising Maeve. You'd think Maeve would get it, right? But no, she just told Annie to fuck off. And with that, the ambitious young girl was stuck in a high-security tower surrounded by predators. And it really makes us wonder what the writers were going for here, whether this is just straight-up misogyny or a brutal reflection of how women have to navigate male-dominated spaces. Because, super not, women everywhere know how real this felt, and the worst part was that Starlight even had powers. You know, like actual superpowers. Even with those, she couldn't fight back, because in that moment, none of it mattered. She was just a woman, and she had to pay the price with her own body. Black Noir has been criminally underplayed in the show. Black Noir in the show is almost a joke at times. I mean, the guy literally choked on a bar of almond joy. And the narcoleptic replacement that Homelander brought in? What the hell's going on there? At times, we feel genuinely bad about how they've handled this character. I guess the main reason for underplaying Black Noir was to establish Homelander as the ultimate baddie, but believe it or not, the comics had Black Noir doing things that were way more disturbing than anything Homelander ever did. In fact, by issue 65, we find out that Noir was actually a clone of Homelander himself. Basically, he was created by Vought as a failsafe in case things ever went too far. We're not sure what even counts as too far in the world of The Boys, but okay. Now, what really made Black Noir such a villain in the comics was that he never actually got to serve his purpose. Throughout the series, he was just there, silently watching Homelander and never really getting the chance to act. So, one fine day, the man gets bored and instead of, I don't know, maybe watching a movie, he starts doing inexplicably horrific things like eating babies and violating corpses. Yeah, the kind of stuff that would make Hannibal Lecter queasy. But wait, did Black Noir just go rogue? Oh, no. He was doing all of this to set Homelander up, and when the time was right, he even framed him for these crimes. Since Homelander couldn't remember any of it, he actually started to believe that he was the one responsible. It even went as far as Noir assaulting Butcher's wife while disguised as Homelander, an act that caused the Butcher-Homelander hostilities in the first place. When Butcher learned the truth, thanks to Huey, he mercilessly shot Noir with a mounted machine gun after Homelander had already torched him, and we saw the soup's guts falling out. Butcher wasn't happy yet, though. He used a crowbar, pushed it up through Black Noir's eye, and took out his brains, saying, "This is the night you done what you done to my Becky." The birth of Becca's child. The show kept the reason for Butcher's hatred for soups the same as in the comics. In both mediums, it stems from what happened to his wife, Becca, aka Becky in the comics. Basically, because of how Homelander/Black Noir in Homelander's suit forced himself on Becca, but in the show, for the longest time, we were led to believe that Becca died while giving birth to a superpowered child. However, it was ultimately revealed that she was living in isolation with her son Ryan and raising him in secret. In the comics, there's no such twist that could keep Becca alive. In fact, they portrayed her life even more miserably. This all showed up in The Boys, Butcher, Baker, Candlestick Maker, issue number 4. Billy and Becky were on a Florida vacation, trying to live a normal life, and while they were at Miami Beach, they ended up seeing the Seven in action, and immediately Becky was weirded out by them, like she straight up called them Nazi circus freaks, which honestly, fair. They joked about it and shared a sweet little moment, and for a second, everything felt normal. But of course, that couldn't last. Not long after, Becky started feeling off. Her behavior changed and her health started going downhill while Billy couldn't figure out what was going on. One night, she told him she wasn't feeling great and stayed in while he stepped out for a bit. When he came back and checked on her, she just brushed it off like it was nothing and blamed it on the food. But it kept getting worse, and the whole time, poor Becky just put on a brave face, pretending it was some normal health issue, but it was far from that. One night, while they were asleep, everything went horribly wrong. Billy woke up in the middle of the night and tried to get Becky up, but she wasn't responding. And then he saw it. This thing had literally torn out of her womb and was flying in the air. And, while still attached via umbilical cord, this newborn infant tries to kill Butcher with heat vision. Understandably, Butcher panicked and went at it with the light stand. He kept smashing it and screaming "cunt" over and over again. Now, when it was over, it hit him. Becky was gone. And this version of Ryan didn't even come close to getting a name in the comics.
Who's this guy?
The new lad, Huey. Huey?
Why is Mother's Milk named so? Well, this is something the show never explored, and frankly, it kind of bugged us. I mean, think about those who got introduced to the boys through the show. They have to accept that a strong, broad man is nicknamed Mother's Milk at face value. That's pretty unfair, given that MM's name had an expansive history in the comics. As it so happens, Marvin T. Milk was born with Compound V in his blood. How? His mother used to work at a Vought facility and was constantly exposed to the serum. As a result, when she gave birth, she ended up birthing a soup. Yup, Marvin was actually a superpowered human in the comics, as opposed to the show's portrayal of him being the brain of the group and a dedicated father. Ennis and Robertson actually created Marvin as a soup who enjoyed the basic perks of the superhuman package: extreme strength, durability, and a genius-level intellect. But there was one tiny drawback. MM's superpowers could be retained only if he kept drinking his mother's Compound V-loaded breast milk, which also helped him slow down his aging. In fact, MM told Huey that when his mother tried to put him off the breast milk, his heart slowed down and no food or medicine worked. Ever since, he just couldn't live without the milk. So why didn't the show portray this? They were fine depicting other questionable stuff, including breast milk-related stuff. Well, it turns out that even as an adult, MM drank directly from his mother's breast. This practice gave him a hard time, and there were instances where he threw up after drinking his mom's milk as an adult, and he often complained to Butcher about feeling disgusted. Okay, we get why they chose to cut this out, but hey, over time, MM started storing his mother's breast milk in a bottle for missions where he had to stay away from her. We really hope the last season finally gives us context as to why Marvin has such a ridiculous pet name, although we wouldn't mind if it was a slightly different explanation than the one we got in the comics. Oh, and by the way, Huey was traumatized when he went to Marvin's home and saw his mother. Check out issue 70 of the comics, you'll understand why. Kimiko doesn't even have a name in the comics. I know, Kimiko is one of our favorite characters from the show, and her budding, albeit complicated romance with Frenchie was the only breather we got in the series. In fact, she was the first soup the boys had in their group, and she was actually the most powerful member of the team. Yes, we had her brother Kenji, but his arc was too short-lived to etch a memory, and he was created solely for television. The show gave her the name Kimiko and an entirely different backstory. According to the show, she was a child soldier in the Shining Light terrorist organization who was injected with Compound V by her guerrilla countrymen. Inadvertently, she became a byproduct of Vought's plans to create supervillains when the company shipped the serum to terrorists to create fake demand for superheroes and make a platform for them to come in and save the day. However, the comics didn't even give Kimiko a name, and she was just referred to as the Female. In issue 38, we learn that people often assume Hiroshima was the reason for what happened to the Female, but As the creators wrote, it was never Hiroshima. As it so happened, her mother was a secretary at a Tokyo corporation and was pretty much thriving. Interestingly, the company her mother was working for had a crazy Dr. Uderzo who was trying to stabilize the synthetic copy of Compound V to compete with America. Now, the woman decided to hide the female under her desk rather than paying for daycare. Naturally, she would often crawl out, and one fine day, the little girl sealed her fate by accidentally eating some Compound V. The doctor literally said, "It looks similar to some blue baby food, but it's not," and then all of a sudden there she was, inside a bucket of the serum, gulping it down. And by the time the scientist's assistants found her, she had already made a meal out of a doctor's face. She was imprisoned after that, and her mother didn't even come back for her. The female would break out time and time again, but every time, the outside world confused her even more. That is, until one day, the female finally escaped and ended up being rescued by the boys. Even in the comics, Frenchie is the only one who could get through to her, and her mutism was also selective, unlike in the show where it's shown as a permanent side effect of trauma. Stormfront was gender-swapped in the show. This is by far one of the biggest changes the showrunners made. Stormfront wasn't a seductive superhero in the comics whom Homelander grew attached to, she was a he. I mean, Stormfront was a man in the comics. The show did keep her Nazi ties the same, but that's about where the resemblance ends. Stormfront was teased in issue 7 of the comics, titled The Boys Get Some Part 1. He appeared as a tall, muscular man and wore a bright red bodysuit with a Nazi eagle on the chest. In our opinion, Stormfront's red suit with a golden symbol was a pretty clear nod to Shazam. He also served as the unofficial leader of Payback, a role which was given to Soldier Boy in the show, and in issue 31, we hear that even though he's German, he's only second to Homelander. Yep, Stormfront was that powerful. There's another fun fact too. In the comics, Stormfront also had a short sexual relationship with Queen Maeve, but dumped her badly after she cheated on him. Stormfront had a major fight with Butcher where the two had a verbal spat over their nations being on different sides of the war, and frankly, we loved the way Butcher beat him to a pulp while MM hit him with a baseball bat almost at the end. But you know who stole the show and delivered a major blow before everyone stomped on his head and genitals? Love Sausage. He entered the scene with an unmissable hammer and sickle symbol on his red suit, taking the political commentary to a whole new level, and helped the boys kill him. Dakota Bob had a larger role in the comics. In the show, Robert Singer was given quite a small role after being introduced in the first season as a politician who didn't come off as very strong-minded, with either Vought or the boys pushing him around. By season 3, we see him running for president, and despite not being overly ambitious, somehow the nickname Dakota Bob appealed to him. In season 4, Singer even won the election, with Victoria Newman as his proposed vice president. However, Victoria had her own plans which didn't materialize once Bob found out about her being a supe. He teamed up with the CIA and started planning to take her out while almost getting himself killed under Homelander's orders. Soon after, everything blew up, and right after the election was certified, Singer got caught on tape planning Newman's assassination. But before anything could play out, Butcher killed her, and the whole world, including the FBI, pinned it on Singer, leading to his arrest. Basically, the show presented him as more of a liberal figure, which was quite different from his comic counterpart. In the comics, he was this tough, old-school politician, almost a parody of someone like Dick Cheney. He was never on board with Vought American turning superheroes into military tools, and that's just one of the key differences, especially in how firmly he pushed back against Vought. That's exactly why things started getting messy behind the scenes when Vic, who was Vaught's VP, completely lost it when he found out someone was leaking inside information to Dakota's people. When Dakota Bob Schaefer won the election in 2000 and became the president, he was described as an old-school Republican, as cold as the Badlands themselves, and someone who constantly clashed with Vought over national security. To keep him in check, Vought placed Victor K. Newman, yeah, Victor, not Victoria, as it was in the show, as his VP. For the first 8 months, things were relatively stable, even though Dakota never really trusted Newman and saw him as a Vought puppet. Then, September happened, and everything changed. In this universe, the 9/11 attacks were part of a larger Vought plan. One of the planes was meant to hit the South Tower of the World Trade Center, and under Dakota's orders, the Air Force was ready to shoot it down. But then things got complicated. Another plane was still in the air, and supes like Homelander and Maeve showed up when suddenly the Air Force was told to stand down for no clear reason. What followed was a complete disaster. The Seven completely botched the situation, leading to a plane crash. And whatever really went down inside the White House that morning, especially after Dakota Bob gave the order to take them all out, remained a mystery, according to old legend. Dakota, however, played his cards perfectly in public after that. He said all the right things on TV, and people already loved him, especially when it came to his stance on Pakistan. But his fight against Vought came to an untimely end. In a bizarre and brutal turn of events, Dakota Bob was killed by a wolverine that got loose due to a security breach, and it mauled him to death while he was meeting the Association of Children with Special Pets in the Oval Office. The Vought cinematic universe was created specifically for the show. At the end of the day, The Boys is all about superhero parodies, though the makers took the idea of parody a notch higher. In the comics, they handled different eras of superheroes and went after the classic stuff, which are clear indications of how Ennis and Robertson gave the finger to DC and Marvel's characters. The show, however, is set in a modern era where media plays a huge role, and that's exactly why they came up with the Vought cinematic universe, because unlike in the comics, the easiest way they could take a dig at the conventional soups was by satirizing the style of the MCU and the DCEU. Consequently, Vaught's soups even got their own origin story movies in the show, with jokes about the MCU and the Snyder Cut thrown in. Sure, the comics had Old Legend, who was once the editor-in-chief for Vought American's comic publishing house for its superheroes known as Victory Comics. So propaganda, PR, merchandising, and selling superhero stories were all there, but not so much in the form of movies or streaming platforms like Vought Plus, created solely for the show, which were created solely for the show to mock the current superhero trends. Maeve didn't get a happy ending in the comics. Both the show and the comics follow a similar story arc with Queen Maeve, going from a full-on badass to slowly finding her conscience. She stands up to Homelander in both versions, but her redemption plays out very differently in the show compared to the books. On screen, we saw Maeve going against Homelander and losing an eye in the process before she sacrificed herself. The fight supposedly killed her until it was finally revealed that she used her death as a facade in public to start a new life with her partner Elena. In the storyline named Over the Hill with the Swords of 1,000 Men, Part 4, Maeve went head-to-head with Homelander after literally throwing Starlight out of the Seven's headquarters to protect her. She charged at him with a sword, which sadly just broke into pieces upon touching Homelander's head, and the next thing we knew, Homelander was drenched in blood. Yeah, Maeve was actually decapitated by the Brute in the comics, and no one was there to save her. Worst of all, Maeve didn't even put up a proper fight against him. Sister Sage is the show's original creation. Yet another thing that really stands out in the show compared to the books is Sister Sage. Played by Susan Hayward, she's supposedly the smartest person on the planet. Interestingly, there's no such character in the original comics. The showrunners came up with this new soup, her powers, and even established a past with A-Train where they were both in teenage kicks before they made the Seven. She was brought in by Homelander to help with his whole plan to dominate the soups and even deal with the boys. Now, this is where we really appreciated creative liberty. You see, they did something good, because at this point, she might even be scarier than Homelander himself. Fans are buzzing that Sister Sage might end up betraying Homelander and helping the boys, and we're gonna flip out if that actually pans out. Alright guys, that's all we've got for you today. We know there's a ton of other differences between the boys' show and the boys' comics, but these are the 10 biggest that we were able to come up with. With the final season knocking at our doors, we're sure a few more will pop up, so let us know if there's anything we missed in the comments section down below, and while you're down there, if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you'd like to see more stuff like this from our channel. It really helps us out. Thanks for watching, and we'll see ya in the next one.